Good afternoon and welcome to Not Minding My Own Business. I am your estate planning and elder law attorney, Russell Farbiars, and I am joined here today by Kirsten Haas of Girls on the Run. Welcome, Kirsten.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. So as you know, Girls on the Run is a program that's near and dear to my heart because my daughter who's now 11 participated in Girls on the Run for a couple of seasons, and notably during the COVID era when it was a run on your own away from everyone else tournament. But what I love about the program uh, is that not only is it great because it gets girls out physically active, but you focus on things like self-esteem and building up girls so that they aren't sort of the victims of what can often happen to middle-aged and high school kids. So
Absolutely.
so can you talk a little bit about the program and
Sure.
what the objectives are?
Sure. So, Girls on the Run is actually a national organization, and some people don't realize that. Girls on the Run International has actually been around since 1996. It was founded by Molly Barker, who was actually a triathlete and marathoner. And she actually kind of founded the organization out of some of her own life experience, having gone through some mental health issues and some addiction issues. And she found solace in running, but also came to realize that perhaps, as you said, if she had some better tools, maybe she was younger, she might have made some different decisions. And so that's what kind of morphed and became the Girls in the Run program, was incorporating lessons on emotion management, decision making, understanding that as a girl, you have a voice and you can use it, that you can make a difference, and that you can be a good friend, you can create a team, you can be a community, and then also incorporate physical activity and the benefits that physical activity has on an individual's not just physical health, but their mental well-being as well. Girls in the Run Berks County has actually been around since 2013. In fact, fall of 2023 will be the start of our 10th anniversary year, so we're super excited to have made it that far. Especially given the events of the past few years. But locally, we serve the girls of Berks and Schuylkill counties, and our focus group are girls in grades 3 through 8. And so within that age group, we actually have two programs. So we have the traditional Girls on the Run program, which focuses on girls in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. And then we have our Heart and Soul program, which is for girls in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. And the programs, the fundamentals are very similar. Again, we start by focusing on the individual girl. We don't give girls self-confidence or self-esteem. They have it. We just teach them that they have it and how to access it, how to express it. So the lessons kind of start with that individual awareness. And then it grows from there to how do you take that individual, as we call it, star power, and how do you spread that to your friends? How do you make a friend, be a good friend? And then as you make friends, you learn that you comprise a team. And so you learn that you're not alone in this world, that when you have a problem, you can ask for help. That when you see someone having a problem, you can ask if they need help. By forming a team, the lessons progress and the girls learn that as a team, they are part of a community. And that community might be their family, it might be their school, it might be their church or synagogue, it might be their athletic team that they're on. And that as a community, as part of a community, they can make an impact and make life not just good for themselves, but for everyone around them. And so the lessons go throughout the season. Our seasons are typically 10 to 12 weeks long, and the girls meet for roughly 75 to 90 minutes twice a week. And as their season progresses and these lessons progress, they culminate in two major activities, one of which is their community impact project. And this is a project that the teams decide, the girls decide, it's not up to the grown-ups. And the girls do a self-contained project. So it might be, for instance, writing thank you notes to first responders. It might be, I believe actually the team that your daughter was on during pandemic, because I was a substitute coach for that virtual team, Their project was beautifying their community. And I thought what was so amazing about that project is that you had girls, none of whom lived in the same neighborhood, but yet over virtual, they decided as a team, we want to make our neighborhoods a prettier, a prettier place. And so we had one girl who planted flowers in front of her house, thinking that if I set the example, maybe my neighbors will do the same. Another girl on the team, she and her mother went out on a weekend and picked up, garbage around the neighborhood. So that's kind of a way in which they realized one action can make this really big impact potentially. For the older girls, the 6th and 8th graders, the lessons are kind of the same, but we use some different activities and different tools and some different vocabulary because they are older. They have a different grasp of these concepts than perhaps younger girls do. But we also seek to address some of the issues that at that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade stage that girls might be encountering in terms of the changes they're going through physically and mentally, but also as they're entering middle school, encountering maybe more activity on social media and things of that nature.
It sounds like I know from experience that you guys just do so much. And what sort of impact have you seen in the community and the girls that you serve since you started in 2013?
Well, overall, we've served, if we now include last year in our upcoming year, we're on track to serve probably between 4,500 and 5,000 girls since our inception in 2013. Most of that in Berks County because we only took on School in 2019 and the pandemic kind of put a little obstacle in our way in terms of growing in Schuylkill County. But what we see is just, first of all, a lot of repeat girls, like, your daughter is a great example, girls who go through the program, not just one season, but multiple seasons. And because we rotate our curriculum versions, that's possible. A girl can participate in multiple seasons and not do the same activities twice. And we have a lot of girls that do that because they just have such a great experience and they make great friends. Some girls actually go through the Girls in the Run and then kind of go into Heart and Soul. Anecdotally, it's amazing to me when I'm out and about at events, now that we can be out and about at events and be at something like Guts and Glory, and we have college age girls stop by and say, oh, I did Girls in the Run. I have a good friend whose daughter is a Girls in the Run alum, and she now runs track at Rider, University in New Jersey. And I hear from her about how her experience in Girls in the Run, even though we're not necessarily a training program, the values and the self-confidence she got from being in the program helped her excel in sports in high school and now in college, and gave her the confidence to believe that she could compete, at those various levels. Overall, it's interesting. There's actually been a longitudinal study on the lasting impact of the Girls in the Run program. Some of those are that 85% of our participants have reported an increase in their confidence, in their caring, in their ability to make connections and connect with other people. It's important not to overlook that there is a physical aspect to our program. We do want girls to understand not just the benefits of physical activity, but to have fun with it. I mean, most of us are not athletes, but that doesn't mean that you can't have fun running and jumping and playing around. But what's interesting is over 40% of the girls who participate in our program, if they weren't physically active before Girls in the Run, they have stayed physically active after Girls in the Run in some way, shape, or form. And certainly a lot of our girls, they don't go on to run track at any level. But even if they just go out for a walk with their family once a week or go out for a walk with a friend, they've gotten the mental health benefits out of it. But we also have our study showed that 97% of our girls reported learning critical life skills. So again, going back to our founder, someone who believes in themselves and also has a support system around them. It's not to say you're never going to make a bad decision, but you're probably more likely to step back and think about it, right, and make a better decision. And that's what's really, I think, important. And that's the lasting impact of our program. I mean, if these girls can learn self-confidence at, 8, 9, 10 years old, how much easier is their life going to be when they're 18, 19, 20, or they're in their 30s or 40s, or,
it's
older than
set,
that.
yeah, it's setting that foundation for them so that they know, sort of, they know who they are, and they know that they have the
Absolutely.
confidence to be who they are before they get to that stage where everything about them is challenged, and through puberty.
Yes.
So it makes a lot of sense. And let's not forget that you're also training for the 5K, which comes at the end, which is also helps them sort of learn how to incrementally prepare for a large task. Uh,
Absolutely, and that's the other thing. The other thing they work towards, that 5K at the end. We like to call it an event rather than, or a celebration, because it is a non-competitive event. We certainly have some girls who finish it in easily 22 minutes. In fact, we just had our 5K November 7th or 19th, and I'm always impressed when these girls come across the finish line at 22 minutes. And I'm trying to think, when was the last time I did a 5K in 22 minutes? Never. But I have finished several, and that's really what we try to get the girls to understand is, first of all, this is a goal that you set at the beginning of the season, and you're going to accomplish that goal.
yeah, you're
Whether
going
it's
to do
in
it.
20, right, it might be 22 minutes, it might be an hour, but everyone who crosses that starting line crosses the finish line, and they don't do it alone. All of the girls have a running buddy, and typically the running buddy might be a family member, it might be a family friend, it might be a sibling. For girls who may not have that in their support system, we often have community volunteers who want to give their time and just enjoy randomly doing a 5K on a Saturday. And the purpose of that running buddy is to stay with the girl, encourage her, and to push her, not in a way like push her go faster, but like, hey, you've got this, you can do this. We've only got, a mile to go, but we're almost there. So it's a great sense of accomplishment, because nothing, even if the girls never do another 5K, they're always going to have that medal. They're always going to be able to say, I did a 5K. And as you point out, it's a great way to teach goal setting, right?
Right.
They work towards it, and every week they write down their laps and they set goals for themselves. I'm going to run 5 laps. I'm going to run 10 laps. And they can see themselves improving, but they can also see that, hey, when you have a setback, that doesn't mean that it's game over. It just means, okay, this week I was going to run 10 laps and I only ran 7. And, maybe it wasn't a great day. Maybe the weather was bad. Maybe their head just wasn't into it. But then they learn how to rebound from that. And
Right.
like, okay, it's a fresh start and I'm going to do better this time.
Yeah, they learn how to not let that minor setback derail them from the larger goal.
Absolutely.
And I've seen that firsthand, because I know exactly what you're talking about with the setting the lap goals, because my daughter and I have talked about that, when she was in the program. And it's really inspiring to watch her as a young lady sort of figure all of this out, and develop that confidence. And I can tell you, she is very, a confident, sometimes overconfident 11-year-old. But
And we've done our job well.
you've done your job well. But so tell me, how did Girls on the Run start in the Berks County area?
So actually, our founding executive director is Kim Rivera. And in fact, it's funny, I believe now she's Kim Ryan, but she actually lives just now a block away from me. But yeah, she started the organization back in 2013. And I know a little bit about Kim personally. She is an individual who very much is about girl power, women empowerment. She has a daughter of her own, who I know is very active in the early years of Girls on the Run. And she's the one who really got the ball rolling in 2013 and did this as an executive director, as really a volunteer, until 2 or 3 years into our, getting everything started. I believe the first season in 2013, I believe we had 75 girls. Contrast that to just this past fall, where we had over 200, almost 240 girls.
Wow.
And that's post-pandemic. So it's interesting, because certainly over pandemic, Girls on the Run had to really come to a hard stop and figure out, what do we do? And even though I wasn't part of the organization then, you have to think about this. We have like 190 something councils across the United States. Okay. And so nationals in this position where they can't necessarily say it's A or B because every place in the country was different in how they handled the pandemic. And so their direction to councils was like, we're going to basically officially cancel the spring 2020 season. Yet they gave councils the resources to, like, if you can find a way to keep going, we will help you in any way we can. And I know here in Berks, although the season was officially canceled, we actually had one team, I believe it was Perry Elementary out of Hamburg, who stayed on board and completed the season virtually. In fact, that group of volunteers became one of the remarkable volunteer team recipients in 2020. That leads us into fall of 2020, and I believe that's a season where your daughter participated. And by that time, National had sort of figured out officially how to handle this. And but again, gave us resources and if you can have an in-person team, if you're allowed to do that, then we support that. If you cannot, we also support virtual options. What we opted to do here in Berks, because every school system was different, some were virtual, some were in person, some were hybrid, is however we can deliver it, we're here for you. Right. So we did have an in-person team in fall of 2020. I believe we had a community team, which is something we have always been able to do, but really leaned hard into during the pandemic. And then we had a virtual team. The virtual team was kind of amazing. I was a substitute coach on a few of their practices, and it was really inspiring to see how these girls adapted. Mm-hmm. They're on this virtual team practice, and we're trying to do exercises. So, we're backing up from the cameras and doing push-ups and stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, don't fall on your push-up. That would be really embarrassing. I got to be an example for these young ladies. But they were all in on it. And even in the comment section, they're putting in little notes to each other, like, you've got this, and I'm behind you, and we support you. And it was really heartwarming to see that. For our school teams, again, Perry Elementary participated in person, and I went to their site 5K, and they did such a great job. And I think they had to run 10 laps or something around the parking lot. But the girls were as active in it as they were at our normal 5K. And then the community teams were something that we really leaned into. A lot of our teams are around schools. And so that generally means that only girls who go to that school can be on that team. Right. With our community teams, that enabled girls who were maybe at schools that didn't allow after school activities at that point in time, or maybe weren't having girls on teams, they could still participate in the program. So for instance, we had in spring of 2021, we had a team at the Wyomissing Playground. We had girls on that team who were from Wyomissing School District, Wilson, Reading, Fleetwood. Basically, if you could get there, you can be on the team. And it was really amazing because, again, now you have this group of girls, most of whom did not know each other from school. And now they've just made this whole new group of friends. And I mean, how likely is that to happen outside of maybe organized sports?
Yeah, my daughter was on that team. And she really enjoyed it because she was very disappointed because there wasn't a school-based team that season. And so I knew that the mom of a friend of hers, pushed to have a team, and it was great. She really enjoyed it. It's just great to see the girls so active and learning all of these great life skills. Now, how did you become involved with the organization?
Well, so I got involved in June of 2020. So I like to say that I was the front of the spear of the great resignation, reshuffle, whatever they're calling it now. I had previously worked actually with the Greater Reading Chamber Alliance, and we went virtual during the pandemic, and I had previously, earlier in my career, been involved in a very corporate style job and enjoyed it for pretty much most of my 20 years, but at some point realized that I wanted to do something different. And in making that change, kind of had to figure out, what did I want to do when I grew up? That's a question you never stop asking yourself.
No, it isn't. It's
And realized that I wanted to work for stakeholders instead of stockholders. And so that led me to a couple of different organizations that eventually got me to Girls in the Run. And I heard about it actually through a community member and thought, well, this sounds kind of interesting. Actually, a few years prior, when they had advertised for an executive director, I had applied unsuccessfully at that time. And so this time I thought, well, maybe this is the right time. I mean, sometimes it's just not the right, it's not that it's the wrong opportunity, it's just not the right moment.
right.
Apparently, spring of 2020, with everything that was going on, that was the right moment for me to join Girls on the Run. Yeah, so I was really excited to be involved with the organization. And, you know, as an individual, I've always been involved, quite honestly, in very male-centric industries. I mean, my corporate experience is in manufacturing. So it was a complete switch to be in an environment that is very female-centric, very woman-centric. But I've always had to make sure that my voice got heard, that people respected my work. And so I've worked hard at that as an adult. So to bring those lessons to Girls in the Run and be able to pass it along within the framework of our program to a whole nother generation, it's just a great way. I mean, yes, it's my job, but how privileged I feel to work for an organization that just also means so much to me personally, but has such a benefit for the next generation of young women.
And that's the right mix, because you know, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And it sounds like that's what you've achieved.
Yeah, and it's been a long time coming. No.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Every experience is different. And again, this is for people who've not really ever been involved in nonprofit work, it is work. You know, it's not all, hey, this is awesome and we're doing great stuff. It is work like any other job. But again, when you can marry that with the idea that, you know, at the end of the day, everything you've done has benefited somebody in some way, shape, or form, even if it's a small one, then, you know, you can log off at the end of the day and feel pretty good about it.
Well, nonprofits are businesses just like for-profits are.
Yes.
Except the profit that you generate is not measured in money, it's measured in impact. And
Yes.
and that's the important thing. I actually did start my career in nonprofits before I became a lawyer, so I'm familiar with how that, you know, the different mindset. But it is not, you know, it's not all fun and games, because at the end of the day, you're still running a business that
Right.
doesn't rely on you necessarily selling services, relies on you selling a mission to donors.
Right. And that can be certainly more challenging than when you're selling a physical item, like a widget,
right.
Or even selling a service, like, you know, as a lawyer, you're selling a very specific service to somebody. Right. I mean, the challenge that we have is that I have to sell people on our mission. And we promote that to people across our community. Not all of them have children. Not all of them have girl children. And so the challenge is having people understand that if we uplift even just one part of our community, and that's girls, then that has a ripple effect across everyone else. You know, boys, men, the community at large. We create the next generation of women who are more confident, who become better leaders, who become maybe more conscientious leaders, and other people can learn from them. So yeah, I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Oh, absolutely, because you know, you're helping to create more well-rounded citizens, or young citizens who will become the leaders of our county and of the country.
Yes.
And it's important to provide that support. Now, let's shift gears a little bit. How do you like to spend time when you're not working? Since work isn't really work.
Well, some days work is really work. No, me personally, well, I enjoy writing. So one of the things I do, I'm very involved with the Berks Women to Women organization.
Okay.
I had been aware of it for some time, but really got engaged in it when I was working at the GRCA. Rachel Romig was one of my colleagues and actually one of my QB mates at the chamber. And so I got to know more about the organization by attending events in my capacity as membership director. And then this is what happens when you put stuff out into the universe. I had put out at a luncheon with my colleagues that in 2020, so much was going to happen in 2020. In 2020, I wanted to write more because it's something I've always enjoyed doing. And Rachel, when we got back to the office, said, "Okay, I'm putting you on the editorial committee." I'm like, oh, okay, you took me seriously. So I started writing articles for Berks Women to Women. And then about this time last year, Rachel approached me and said, "Hey, how would you like to be managing editor?" So that's one of my volunteer gigs, is I am the volunteer managing editor of Women to Women magazine. In fact, was just scrambling to get that put together for the designer yesterday. But again, another thing I really enjoy doing is exercising my journalistic chops in that respect. But I also enjoy writing just for fun, like essays and poetry and things of that nature. I am a runner. So I kind of got into that. I grew up in Atlanta, and Atlanta, a big deal on the 4th of July is the Peachtree Road Race, which is actually the largest 10K in the country. Lost a bet with my dad, so he signed me up to run it. And a lesson I sometimes tell girls is to train for it, I did a 5K. And I did it at college, and I was the last one across the finish line by like 20 minutes. But
you finished.
I finished, exactly. And so that's been my goal ever since. Anytime I do a race, whether it's 10K, 10 miles, I go down to Virginia Beach most marches with a group of friends, and we do the Shamrock Half Marathon. And I've never been last since then. I've never been first, but I've never been last. But it's just fun, and I enjoy running mostly because it's a great way to kind of get out of my head and just like, ponder if I'm having a difficult day. I can kind of ponder in my head, okay, what's going on and how can I do things differently? Sometimes I get creative ideas that way, and sometimes it's just a great way to listen to some really kick butt music.
Yeah, and the thing with running is you're really not competing with anyone but yourself.
Right.
And that's what, all of my kids have participated in running activities because we did, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a running program that was, once a week for 6 weeks. And they start them at like 2 years old and go, all the way up. And I always just said, just as long as you have fun and you participate, and it doesn't matter if you're first or last. Just,
right.
But yeah, I'm not personally a runner, but I encourage my children.
Well, it is a really, it can be really fun. Certainly it can be work too. And back in 2013, I ran the Marine Corps Marathon. It's kind of a goal of mine. And my sister, who actually lives in California, we trained for it and then both ran the same race, as well as a friend of mine here. And so that was a lot of fun, knowing that there were 2 other people who any given week were just as miserable as I was training. But it was such a sense of accomplishment. It was just the day that we did it. It was exciting. You're with all these other people. And yes, somebody probably completed it in 2 hours, but I completed it in less than 6 hours, which is my goal. And now I have this great medal. I can say to people, those blue shoes you see in the background, those are the shoes I wore. And I'm always going to have that. And even if I never do another marathon again, I'm like, yeah, but I did the Marine Corps Marathon.
But you've done
yeah,
it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So you grew up in Atlanta. How did you get to Berks County?
So I'm actually a military kid. So Atlanta, I consider to be my hometown, but my parents are from Scranton. I was born in Hawaii, spent part of my childhood in Virginia Beach, but we moved to Atlanta when I was a kid. And so that's home. That's where we grew up. That's where I went to college. but I came to Berks County as part of my job. So I worked for a specialty steel company, and originally as a salesperson, and then had an opportunity to take a role here in the home office. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I moved here in 1998, and then I met my husband, and we got married 7 years later, and here we are.
Oh, glad to have you making
Yeah.
such positive contributions. Now, I really appreciate having you on the show here today. What is something that more people should be aware of about what you or what Girls on the Run does?
Wow. So I just think the main thing people need to understand, we're not an athletic training program. So, because sometimes we do get comments from parents like, oh, I thought they would do more running. And nothing's wrong with that. You know, if that's what you want and that's what your child wants, that is fantastic. But interestingly, there was actually just an article in the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I did post this on our social media about programs like Girls on the Run and the benefits we do have for girls who want to get into running as a sport. And again, it goes back to that self-esteem and that self-confidence and that decision-making ability, that whether you're going to become a runner or you're just going to do what you want to do, those all play a role in it. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is for girls to learn those lessons as early as possible, because, and certainly everyone can learn those lessons, not to imply that only girls need these lessons. They are just as valuable for boys and young men. But I think definitely still in 2022, girls have that just extra, I don't know if you want to call it pressure, but just we still hear those messages that say, well, you need to tone it down a bit. You need to be quiet. You need to stay in your lane. And no, the world is not going to become a better place if we just stay in that box. And the younger we can teach girls that you can have a voice and you should and absolutely need to use it. You can be in any lane that you choose to be in. They're going to carry that with them as
Absolutely.
they get older, and then when they get into middle school and high school, they're gonna know how to stand up for themselves, stand up for other people, and not to stand up against bullying, but like, no, my idea deserves to be heard. They learn to work with others. And the other thing that people don't necessarily know about our lessons is that sometimes we actually design our lessons to teach girls how to fail. That sometimes things don't always turn out the way you thought they were going to turn out. But again, that's okay. You learn how to deal with it and go like, okay, what could I have done differently? And problem solving, and you move forward.
See, and that's great. And I love what you said about telling girls that they can be in whatever lane they want to, because we still try to pigeonhole young ladies into what society thinks is appropriate. But the reality is that they can pick their own lane and they can pick their own future.
Absolutely. And don't let anyone tell them they can't.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, Kirsten, what's the best way to do that?
So our website is www.goterberks.org. So it's GOTRBERKS.org. You can also email us at info@goterberks.org. And myself or our program manager, Tanya Hollis, would be happy to answer any questions you have. Whether you're interested in enrolling a girl in our program, actually, we will be probably opening registration for our spring program. I believe will open in February, end of January. But also, we're always, again, we are a nonprofit. We always could use the help of volunteers. So if you have any interest in volunteering, whether that's being a volunteer coach, volunteering as a 5K, or even joining our board of directors, any interest you have, we're happy to hear of it. But I would be remiss if I also did not say that this is the season of giving. So As a nonprofit, we depend on the generosity of our community. So if anyone's interested in making a donation, you can again go to our website and click on the How to Help page. It'll take you to donate. And we give some ideas for how your donation can help us out.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And this has been another episode of Not Minding My Own Business.